I'm looking, I guess, for the competitive advantage or the twist that kept you not only open, but profitable when almost nobody else knew how to do that in this space.
We really, really tried to emphasize service. When people come in and they want help, we want to have somebody there that's able to answer the question. Are we perfect at that? No. Are we above average? Yes, we are above average. And so I would say service was one of those areas. The other would be selection. We try to carry a broad selection. We would take comment cards. We would hand them out and ask our customers, how are we doing? And we would rate those. We compared them to stores. So every year we'd get 100 cards. We'd hand them out till we got 100. So we'd have 100 people saying, your service is lousy or it's good or whatever, and several other things. We worked really, really hard to say, guys, your scores have got up. Some reason your scores aren't up. Let's help you.
Welcome to the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast. I'm so glad you joined us today. Hey, you ever wonder what it's like to defy Amazon? Like, can you be that startup that really defies the trends? We're going to talk to one of the OGs in Christian book selling, and that is Mart Green, the Green family of Hobby Lobby. Also talk about a lot of things with the Green family, the He Gets Us campaign, and a whole lot more. But how do you actually beat a giant at its own game? Well, we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. So we're going to do something today that is fun for those of you who are watching. We're going to give away 5 copies of Mart's new book, Learning to Be Loved. The way to do that is just in the comments, say, I'm ready to read, and you may be one of the 5 that we select to get a copy of Mart's new book. Now, we're going to hear a word from our sponsors and then to today's conversation. This episode is brought to you by Gloo. What you do as a church leader matters, but how do you know if your ministry is growing and thriving? Well, now, Church Metrics is fully integrated with Gloo, making it easier than ever to track and understand your congregation's impact. So you can transform your weekly meetings by seamlessly syncing your account and watching your dashboard come to life. You'll get real-time insights on attendance, giving, salvations, and volunteers all in one place. You can compare your numbers year over year. You can look across campuses or even against national church trends. Plus, AI-powered insights help you make smarter, data-informed ministry decisions. So don't just lead with clarity. Visit gloo.us/insights to unlock valuable insights today. This episode is brought to you by Upward Sports. New research shows that 67% of pastors say sharing the gospel with non-Christians is my church's top priority. Meanwhile, only 1% of churches say they are, quote, very effective in reaching out to the unchurched. So have you thought about using sports as your invite to your church? Upward Sports equips churches to run self-sustaining sports ministries in their communities. You heard that right. Self-sustaining, it pays for itself. Last year, 51% of the participants who played Upward Sports had no church affiliation. All of those participants have parents, siblings, and other friends and family members that will come out and interact with your weekly sports league. Upward offers basketball, soccer, flag football, volleyball, baseball, softball, running, and starting next month, even pickleball. Upward Sports is ready to equip, train, and support you every step of the way. You can learn more at upward.org/Carey. That's upward.org/CAREY. Well, welcome to the podcast, Mart. It's great to have you.
Great to be here, Carey. Looking forward to it.
So I want to cover a lot of topics today. This is the first time you've been on the show. And I'd love to start with how you discovered that you could make a contribution to Hobby Lobby. We have a lot of people who are in generational businesses and actually, believe it or not, generational churches, right? Dad was a pastor. I'm taking it over, that kind of thing. So a lot of second generation people try to figure out their role in the organization, church, or company. How did that happen for you?
Yeah, everybody's story is unique, of course, and how they got involved. And for us, it was 1970. I was 9 years old when my dad borrowed $600. That's the most the bank would loan him. So to start a business, you can't do a lot with $600, right? And so my dad had to keep his job. My mom worked for free, and then he bought a chopper that would chop wood, and then bought sticks of wood, and we cut those and we would glue them together to make mini frames. And so I got paid 7 cents. My brother, who was 7, got paid 7 cents, and my sister was 3 at that time. And the child labor laws in our house were 5, so she didn't have to work. So at 5, you just went to work, and I'd worked at my dad's other company. I'd go in and tear covers off books so they could send them back. And so we were just used to working. We just assumed everybody went to work when they were 5 and 6 years old. So anyway, at 9, we just started gluing frames. And so I guess for us, we were almost born in the business, and I know that's not everybody's story. So ours is a unique story. It just became a family business. So my brother and my sister, my parents, have all been working together since 1970. And all of us are still in the business. Now, my sister married a fella and he's in the business. My wife and Steve's wife both chose to be housewives and mothers. And so they didn't work in the business, but we've been doing it. So it just was kind of something that almost happened naturally and organic, I suppose, Carey. So I know that's not everybody's story, but that's kind of our unique way of getting the business.
I'm curious as to what the dynamics were that made you want to stay. I mean, arguably at 9, you don't have a choice, right? Dad says, do this, you do this. But at 19 or 29, you've got options. So what happened in those years where you kind of came into your own and obviously made a decision long-term to stay there?
Yeah, my story is a little different than my brothers and sisters because when I was 19, I was at college. So we would work each summer. And I loved overtime, because the minimum wage was $3 and overtime, you got paid $4.50. It was unbelievable. I would work 60 and 70 hours. I would go in before anybody was in Hobby Lobby, price merchandise, work as many hours as I could because I just thought that was fantastic. So I was at college, having to pay for college, guys, going a semester, kind of taking a semester off working so I could pay for the next semester. And my dad called one time and said, I'm thinking about maybe doing a Christian bookstore someday. Well, my dad's an entrepreneur. He had talked about doing a barbecue stand, different things. And I'm like, no. But Christian bookstore, I thought, wow, retail and the product you sold could make a difference in people's lives. And so about a week later, I called him back and said, Dad, are you really going to do that someday? He says, well, if you want to come home from school, I'll help you get a loan and you can do it. And I said, well, okay, I guess, so I finished that semester out. I was going to have to come home and work anyway. And so I started my own business called Mardell. They're not nationwide. Mardell's Christian education stores. There's 41 of those, mainly in the central part of the U.S. So it's a full-line Christian bookstore, full-line educational store. So started that in 1981, 11 years later. So that's where I spent my next 35 years of my career was doing Mardell, where my brother and sister and dad, I stayed at Hobby Lobby, worked there with my mom. Now I'm on the board of Hobby Lobby, but nobody at Hobby Lobby worked for me for all those years. And so I kind of found another retail that was exciting for me. Now, had that not happened, I'm sure I would have stayed at Hobby Lobby. And it's just fun, something that's growing. I mean, we started with $600. The first store was 1,200 square feet, and then we finally opened one that was 3,000, and then we expanded it. And, and now today we'll end 2024 with 1,037 Hobby Lobby stores. And so it's just been fun to see something grow like that. It's been fun to see the Grant family grow with it because obviously we could not run a company that had 1,000 stores when we started, but we had to learn. And because we kind of are bricklayers, we did one brick and then another brick and another brick. And so people would talk about this overnight success. We go, man, you weren't here the first 20 years. This is not a 20-year overnight. You missed the crawl stage, the walk stage, all that. So, but it was just fun to be a part of what Hobby Lobby was doing. And not only that we felt like it did excellent in ministry, in retail, but we also knew it was really a ministry arm for us, because we knew that if we could make money, we could give money. So that also made it very, very attractive for us to stay around.
Well, it's interesting that, your chosen 3 decades plus was in Christian books, because as you may have noticed, bookstores have been through a real roller coaster over the last few decades. Tell us about how that worked for you, because they're still going concerns. So what was that huge market shift like for you and Mardell?
No, it's great. Actually, when I started Mardell in 1981, the first store that I found was too big for a Christian bookstore. So my dad said, why don't you put office supplies in? I hate going to office supply store because we're not this is pre-Office Max, Office Depot. Yeah. Usually it was delivered. So office supplies was delivered. So you go in the store, nothing was marked. There was no prices. All the boxes looked the same. It wasn't made for packaging or marketing. And so we said, we're not going to deliver it to you. We won't have sales rep. And so we'll have discount office supplies. So Mardell was Christian office supplies. And then a few years later, Office Max and Office Depot came out. So I flew to Florida to look at them. I thought, whoa, man, they got machines and they got furniture and we were just supplies. we're not going to do well. So I thought, well, what would Christian Depot look like? How do you become that? And then over time we evolved and realized that office supplies was not going to carry half its weight, which it was at that time. And so we just started putting educational in. The neat thing about education is education's Christmas, its busy season is July and August. Well, Christian bookstores are around holidays. So it just so happened it kind of evened out the ebb and flow. Now we still have ups and downs. Christmas is still at a peak moment for a Christian bookstore. But for an educational store, so we serve public school teachers, homeschool teachers. And so, yeah, we had lots of selection. And so fortunately, we have been able to make it. Yeah, most of the chains have closed in Christian bookstores. A lot of Christian bookstores have closed down because of the economic situations and the way books are sold, how music was sold. Music sales went away. Used to we had music sales was a good percent of our sales. Now it's a very small percent. So yeah, as a retailer, you just have to adjust. You have to do new things. We used to didn't have wearables. We didn't have much clothing at all. Now we have a big wearables department because that we had to take the place of music. So where music was, now wearables is. And then where office supplies was education. So it's a growing thing. It always evolves. And so you have to keep up with the market. But so far we've been able to do that. And like I said, we have 41 stores that are doing very well and are profitable and excited about the future.
That's a lot of pivoting, which, by the way, congratulations, because almost nobody else in your field was able to do that. When you think about, because I think this is, church leaders struggle with church online versus church in person. And it's very tempting as a pastor to see online as the enemy, right? It's like, we need people in seats. And so your contender probably was Amazon, right? Which, you look at that, they've got $10,000 for every dollar you have in terms of retail sales, et cetera.
Yeah.
How did you, when you think about all the market shakeup over the last 2.5 decades with Amazon, how have you managed to keep selling physical books in a retail location? Like, obviously it's a smaller part of your business than maybe it was, or maybe not. But like, how have you even remained viable as a bookstore?
Yeah, people still enjoy the shopping experience. Some want to do it on Kindle, so they download that. So there's obviously room for Amazon, but there's still people who want to go to a bookstore, look at the product, see it on a shelf, be able to open it, look through a chapter, and do all that. So there's still people very tactile that want to shop. Now, if you're a Kindle person, we're not for you, right? And so that's been great. Bible sales have continued to grow over the years, and even with people like YouVersion, you can get a free Bible. You can download a free Bible if you want to, but still people want to have a physical Bible. So that's true for books and Bibles. For music, it wasn't. People don't want to carry around CDs anymore. And so, like I say, it was different. You had to look at each category differently. But yes, people still want to come in, have an experience. So we try to have an experience. So people come in, they enjoy the music, they enjoy being able around other believers and having an atmosphere, having a store that's got large size, a large selection. And so we worked hard at that, before we had competition like Amazon. And so we've still been able to keep the core customers and adapt, like I say, in certain areas. Like I say, now we have wearables. We have lots of shirts and different clothing items that we didn't have before because we just saw that was available.
I think I've spent enough time around your family to know that this might be uncomfortable for you to answer, but I'm going to ask you to answer it anyway. Mart.
That's not going to stop you. Okay.
Yeah. Because any bookseller could make that argument, right? There are people who want hard copies. There are people who enjoy going into a bookstore and feeling it. And a lot of them are closed today. What would you say the difference is? Why is Mardel still open with 41 locations, when entire chains have gone bankrupt and independents have gone bankrupt and lots of other people have closed their doors? Was there, I'm looking, I guess, for the competitive advantage or the twist that kept you not only open but profitable when almost nobody else knew how to do that in the space?
Yeah, I'm sure it'd be lots of things. I mean, we really, really tried to emphasize service. When people come in and they want help, we want to have somebody there that's able to answer the question. Are we perfect at that? No. Are we above average? Yes, we are above average. And so I would say service was one of those areas. The other would be selection. We try to carry a broad selection. A lot of Christian bookstores, some of the competition was much smaller in size, so they didn't have as much selection, whether it's books, music, other things. So we felt like the selection had. And then I said we had variety. We also had educational. So if you're a homeschool teacher, we met two of your needs. You had, I could buy that. And I also could get my homeschool education, because usually I had to order that. Well, you have to order, you get it in. Oh, I don't like that. It's not made for my child. I got to send it back. Well, That's a hassle versus coming into a store and seeing all 6 of them, sitting down at a table, open it up, having somebody there who says, oh, we've homeschooled before. Oh, your child is this kind of learner. You might like this better. So we worked really, really hard on trying to add that service. When somebody came in, we could be there. Now, some people don't like service. They know what they want. They know where they're going. So you have to do that. So I felt like what we tried really hard to do is emphasize. We would take comment cards. We would hand them out and ask our customers, how are we doing? And we would rate those. We compared them to stores. So every year we'd get 100 cards. We'd hand them out till we got 100. So we'd have 100 people saying, your service is lousy or it's good or whatever, and several other things. And we worked really, really hard to say, guys, your scores have got up. Some reason your scores aren't up. Let's help you. Let's train you. Let's find those areas. And so we made an emphasis. Whatever you measure winds up happening. And so I would say probably that service and selection were a couple of things that we did that might have been different than different stores along the way.
Yeah, well, and longevity often works in your favor, because I just read a piece recently, not in the Christian sphere, but just in the mainline sphere. And like independent bookstores are making a comeback. There's a resurgence, and that's incredible. Have you seen an uptick at all from younger buyers or anything like that in your market?
Yeah, I don't have research on it or numbers on that, but like I say, we've seen our sales go up each year. Our sales have continued to go up. Some departments are up more than others, but like I say, Bible sales, we set a record last year in increase in Bibles. So there's definitely seeing more people come in for Bibles. And so, we try to serve the community. So again, we have grandparents, we have parents, we have young people. And so it's fun to serve that family atmosphere.
Well, congratulations. That was no easy task. When you look at the landscape of booksellers over the last 30 years, for you guys not only to have survived but grown and thrived is pretty cool. Now, I would love to know, because you have Hobby Lobby, you have Mardell, you have other things that you and your family are involved in. What is a counterintuitive insight about faith-based commerce that many people just miss or don't understand?
Yeah, faith-based commerce. I mean, obviously Mardell is a faith-based commerce. It's easier to identify that because it sells Christian product. Hobby Lobby, you'd say, well, nobody has their life transformed for eternity because they bought a silk flower or a canvas, I suppose. But we try to live out our faith in our business. And so I think for us, one of the things that would be counterintuitive is that we've said around here, and it was a process, to be honest, is we're not owners. Now, the government says we're owners of Hobby Lobby and Mardell, and we'll have to pay taxes like we're the owners. That's the way it works. It's a family business. It's not a private equity. It's not a public company. It's owned by the family. But we took the position that we're really stewards, that we're not the owners of this. So what do you do with the wealth? Do I get it automatically? Do my kids, who haven't even worked in the business, they do now, but let's go back a few years when my kids weren't even in business. So my dad was grappling with that. What do I do? I can buy insurance, because if my mom and dad had died 10 or 15 years ago, they would have had to pay huge taxes that we couldn't have afforded. We'd had to sell the business to pay the taxes. So you buy insurance. Then they say, well, you could do generation skipping. You can give some of that stock to your grandkids because they have less value. And so if you die, then you won't have to pay taxes on that. You'll have moved it down to your grandkids. It's like, well, that feels like entitlement. I don't even know which grandkids to give it to. I don't know who's going to marry. Right. I don't know who's going to be in the business. And if I give it to all of them, I want to be fair. I want to give it to all of them. Then someday I'll have people that say, well, I own part of that business, but don't even work in the business. So my dad really lost a lot of sleep over that, to be honest with you. As an owner, how do you handle this? And then I had a friend of mine say, well, Mart, you guys seem to be generous. If you're generous, there's other ways to do it. And we're like, no, our tax guys don't tell us anything about that. They only work about the tax issues. And so we got with some people, got with the National Christian Foundation, other leaders, and said, well, what can we do? In the end, and there's other ways to do things. What we did is we wound up putting 99% of the stock in a foundation, a trust. So if my parents die, that's in the trust. But if anybody ever sells the company, that means they're going to give a lot of money away, because we only own 1% of the company now. Okay. But we have 100% of the voting stock. So all the voting stock is in the 1%. So control's here, but value's here. Okay. They're in two different spots. So if my kids someday decide to sell the company, they won't have a big payday. What they'll have is a lot of money to give away. If that's what Lord moves them to do, and that's what they do, that's their choice. That's the decision they'll have to make when they're on the watch. And so there's a way of telling our family that we're stewards of this. So my kids know there's no big payday coming, no big money. And what we did is we used trees as an analogy, because we started with one little bitty tree. It was a twig. I told you, a $600 little twig. It grew to a tree, and we planted another tree. And now there's 1,037 Hobby Lobby trees. We tell the kids, none of those are yours. Not a single one of those are yours. You don't have a single branch. There's not a single leaf on that tree. The only thing that you have opportunity is the fruit. If you go to work here, you'll get paid just like anybody else. And so if you're the president, you get paid this salary. If you're a buyer, you get paid this salary. So fruit's available. You have that opportunity. And so that's I think what a faith-based business is understanding that you don't own it. And so we actually structured it that way so that then and my kids have known since they were teenagers, there's no big payday coming. And so anyway, do we bless our kids? Yeah, I try to bless them when they're young, because I figure out when I die, they won't need anything from me. So when I die, there's not a lot coming to my kids from me. But I blessed them when they were younger and said, hey, here's a gift for you. And we gave them a little bit of amount each year for 10 years and said, hey, that's enough probably for you to buy a starter home if you want to live debt free, but it's your choice. You can do what you want. You can buy a car with it. You can spend it on more clothes. But so anyway, that's just the way we philosophically did. That might be a little different than what people have been used to, or definitely different than what your tax lawyer will tell you, because they're always trying to protect your asset, which is fine. That's their job, what they're paid to do. But if you think about it different, that you're a steward and not an owner, it makes you go down. So if you're an owner of your business, we don't know how to help you. If you're a steward, we do have some ideas on how to help you.
That's such a different model. I read your dad's book, Giving It All Away and Getting It Back Again, this year. I thought it was fascinating, and he outlines a lot of that in the book.
Yes.
I think one of the questions is, what kind of family dynamic does that create? Like, have you got family members who are like, well, that's not fair? Like, how do you steward the family dynamic associated with that?
Yeah, when we first had to make the decisions, the generation skip tax was kind of getting, so we had to have our grandkids sign off on that hey, they bought into this. Now they were younger. Now they're in their 30s, right? But then they were teenagers. This was 20 years ago. And so they signed off, probably not understanding to the total degree. But again, because they were so young and we kind of taught it, and they just saw that's the way we lived. They see the grandfather, none of us have gotten a salary increase probably in 15 or 20 years, right? It's just, we have enough, right? We don't need any more. And so we want to give it away. And so they've just seen the joy that we give giving and being a part of ministry and building the kingdom. So the other lesson you hear a lot around this family is don't think temporal, think eternal, right? You're only here, as Randy Alcorn talks about the dot. Your life is a dot, then draw a line with an arrow. That's what this dot impacts the arrow. So how you live now affects all of eternity. So don't think about temporal things, think about eternity. So do all of my kids totally understand that and bite into that every single day? Of course not. There's days they're like, man, I sure wish I could have had access to that, because I have a friend whose parents are really, wealthy, and they got lots of money along the way as a Gen 3 member, just because they were a Gen 3 member, a Generation 3. That would be my kids. My parents are Gen 1, the language and stuff. But yeah, I've also had them come back now and say, you know what? I kind of understand it now, because it's kind of like I did in high school. I learned that lesson. My dad didn't buy me a car, and I thought that wasn't right, but I learned later that I spent a lot of money. I worked a lot of overtime hours to get that car. I took really good care of the tires, right? When I saw a friend who squealed his tires out, I said, he didn't pay for that car. And sure enough, he didn't, right? It's just natural. So if you can learn that lesson when you're 16, you don't have to learn it when you're 36, and so I think my kids are starting to understand, because now they're having kids. I have 13 grandkids now. So they understand the value of, so when you see it lived out, it kind of, I think it helps make that. If you interviewed all of them, would you get some grumbles? Yeah, you might, but they're not large ones. They're not loud ones. Nobody protesting in the family. They've understood it. They've lived with it. And I think now that they're parents, they even understand it more, as we all typically do. As we grow up, we kind of understand, why did my parents just give me a bunch of things? And now thank you, Lord, that my parents wanted me to have a work ethic, because a work ethic, you treat things differently.
Yeah. What did your dad do to instill that work ethic in you when you were young? And I realize, the first 10, 15 years of Hobby Lobby, if I've got my timeline right, were not particularly remarkable. There were ups and downs. You were not sitting on millions, let alone billions of dollars that you could give away. It was a typical business, right? Successful one, but it was a bit of a roller coaster. And it's been in the last, 20 years or so that the dividends have paid again and again and again and again. Did I get that timeline right? About?
Yeah, those are close. So
okay, those are close enough. Close enough.
So yeah.
But how did he teach you that when you were younger?
Yeah, I guess again, I saw it in our home. And my dad would get home from work and he would be gluing frames, and so I saw hard work ethic. I went to baseball cards. Now, my friend up the street, he had baseball cards, but his dad bought his cards. My dad didn't. And again, I didn't like that. But I'm 6 and 7 and 8 years old, right? And so he says, here, if you glue these frames, then you can have money for your baseball cards. And so it was just kind of instilled that when you worked, you got to see the fruit of that work, right? And so you got to buy things. And so I guess it just, again, in our case, again, my kids didn't go to work when they were 9. I didn't do it quite the same way as I did, but they started working when they were 16 or 18 and the ages, and they had to, we paid for half their car, we paid for half their college, we did those kind of things. So they still had that work ethic that we came along. But again, it just felt natural, I guess. It was almost like I just assumed everybody's doing that because we just worked in our home. And then we just enjoyed work, and it did grow. I mean, we had ups and downs, but you had another store. Oh, and then you had another store. And so it just felt like it was something that had energy to it, had life to it. Again, early on, we just, tithed the profits. My mom and dad did that. It wasn't until 1997 that we first gave collectively. So that was from that was 27 years. After 27 years of building the business, then we had enough money. We said, well, my mom and dad could have given, because we always tithe their profits. They could have said, well, we'll choose where to go. But they said, no, we've all worked in this business, so we all get one vote. So there's 7 of us. I have a brother-in-law, I have a cousin, my parents, my brother, sister. There's 7 that have worked together for nearly 50 years. Most of us, for all 50, some of them got married less than that. And so the 7 of us have met once a month since 1997, every month for 27 years. And we vote on what we give to every month. And then in Gen 3, my kids, they get to come to that meeting. Now, they don't vote on what we give to. But what we did was we didn't want to give money to each one of them to give away, but we give them a lump sum. So they get a lump sum. So Gen 3, my kids, their spouses, my brother's kids and their spouses, my sister has no children. They come together and they have an amount to give together because it's not always easy to give together, right? Because I like stuff and you like something different, but we have to collectively say, well, this is what we all decided to give to. And so they get to do that. So they get to have that joy of generosity. And so that's just part of the DNA. That's part of the joy of what we get. It's not going and getting more. Of course, my kids want to buy a nicer home. They want to have a second car for their family. So they're getting their career. They're building up. So, but anyway, they also get to see the joy, and most all of them, if not all of them, have gone. All the kids and all the grandkids, my parents' grandkids, have gone on a mission trip. My kids grandkids are just now starting to get the age. I got to take my first grandson on a mission trip to Madagascar to a Bible dedication. And so he's 14. And once they turn 13, I'm going to take all 13 of them to a Bible dedication, because my life was transformed at a Bible dedication. And I want them to go on a missions trip and see what it's like to get God's word in your heart language for the first time in your heart language.
What are your criteria as a family for, or even your personal criteria for what is a worthy cause and not? The vast majority of people who listen to the show got tens of thousands of leaders who are that charity, who are always, whether they're a church or a nonprofit or that kind of thing, trying to figure out how to raise more money for missions. So when the Green family looks at what is a worthy cause versus, I don't think we're going to give there, what are some of the separating characteristics, defining characteristics?
Yeah, good question. Each month when we meet, I have a coworker who's been with me for 15 years. His name is Asif. So he presents the request because I'm part of the mission investment team. So after I left Mardell about 10 years ago, launched it, kept people going. And so now I'm working on all the giving that we do so that I can be freer to do some other things in the future. So up front, we have a jar of marbles. And in the jar of marbles, there's a bunch of white ones and there's a few green ones. So what we tell the family is we are going to work really hard to bring you excellent ministries. So There are things we're looking for in excellent ministries, but you can't give to every excellent ministry. You got to figure out which are the green ones. So there's some phenomenal ministries that we don't give to. We know them, we've seen them, we've heard from them, but it's just not our calling. So what is our calling? Because even though we give half our profits away now, there's still way more to be given to than what we can give, of course. And so what are those green ones? So one of our core values is we give to few deeper than to lots in small amounts. And again, these are not rights and wrongs, Carey, as you can understand, but it's just what we've done because we're a business, we're an ongoing business, we're not a foundation. So we want to build a relationship with these people. So typically, most of the ministries that we've ever found, we found them. In other words, we were out in the marketplace, out doing something and found, oh, wow, here's somebody, let's talk to them. And so usually it takes about 2 or 3 years of relationship building. Typically, we'll give them our time and talent first. We'll come alongside them and give time and talent. I'll give an example here in our city. I got a call from Rob Hoskins, a good dear friend of ours, which was the first ministry we ever gave to, One Hope in 1997 we gave to. And he called and said, Mart, you got to meet Bobby Grunwald. I said, okay. And he says, well, I said, where does he live? He says, well, he lives in your city. I said, why are you calling me about my neighbors? I don't like this. I mean, this is my neighbor and you're calling me about him. So, okay, I'll meet Bobby. First time I met Bobby, I fell in love with him. And his passion, his heart. And he was trying to start this thing called YouVersion. He's going to put the Bible on the computer. And I said, okay, I guess, I don't know, this might hurt my sales. I just lost all my sales to music. Maybe I'm going to lose all my sales to the Bible on the bill.
Wait, you're a competitor.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you might be a competitor, but man, it sounds good. And he said, but you know what, Mart? The Bible's intellectual property and nobody will give me the rights to the Bible. I can get King James, but I can't get, because he was 32 years old. Nobody knew him. He's calling, the NIV, the NLT, ESV, all these different translations. They're saying, who are you? What you want to give it away for what? For free? Well, how about you sell it for 99 cents? How about you put ads on it? And Bobby just was, no, I don't want to. Kids have a hard time paying 99 cents for a song they adore. They're not going to pay 99 cents for a book they don't understand. I want to get it to them for free. So anyway, I just gave time and talent. It took us a year and a half to convince one or two of them to do it. And then the next one and the next one. But then it didn't do well. And so he was about to shut it down. People weren't doing the computer. And he said, Mart, we're going to try to do it. And at that time, we had Blackberries. And I said, you're going to try to get people to read the Bible on a Blackberry? You got to be kidding me. You can't get them to read it on a computer screen. How are you going to get them to read 3 lines on a little Blackberry? Right? That whatever. But we already worked hard. We got all these rights now. We did the hard part. We got all these rights. And so he says, and they said, oh, Apple's getting ready to come out with this, the App Store. And so he said, we're going to try to put it on the App Store. I said, okay, whatever. I mean, I don't know what App Store is. And I love my Blackberry. So whatever you're going to do over there in Apple, go do that, And so anyway, one of the first 200 free apps was the Bible app. And he set a goal to download 60,000 that first half year because it came out in June or July. He said, we're hoping to download 60,000 because they only had like 30,000 people ever go on the computer. So he said, how about these 60,000? And so he called me on Monday. I think the iPhone came out on Thursday or Friday. He said, Mart, we have already downloaded 80,000. I'm going, oh my gosh. And I'm a futurist. I said, oh no, he's going to want Spanish. He's going to want Portuguese. He's going all, which fortunately he didn't want them the next day because he had to go back and figure out how to do the English, right? And so then I went to the family and said, guys, this car's going to run. Let's go give Bobby some money, get him started, like what I call a tarmac gift. Let's just give him all that he needs right now, right? Which wasn't a huge dollar amount. And then he can raise money later. So Bobby, don't worry about raising money because that's hard work. You need to build that. Let's think about that. But right now, go get your technology up to speed. And so that was a way somebody that we saw in the marketplace went alongside them, gave them time and talent for a couple, 3 years before we ever gave them any money. And now they're one of our 8 core ministries. 8 ministries that we've given to over 27 years have gotten 80% of the funding. So
wow,
that's few and deep. So I attend board meetings. I'm not a board member, but I just ask, can I be an observer? Because I want to go in and see, are they talking about succession plan? To me, it's not all about leadership. It's all about leadership and governance with wisdom in the middle. So leadership without governance doesn't end well. Lots of cases. Governance overpowering leadership doesn't. So you have to have governance and leadership. So we spend time with these ministries. We know them, and then we're able to connect them to other ministries. So there's been several ministries we connected YouVersion to, or vice versa. Something comes out and we say, hey, let's get that on YouVersion. We talk to YouVersion. So it's been fun to be a connector that way. So, but in those ministries, what am I looking for? I look for 3 character traits, and they all come from 1 John 2:16. And I talked about Randy Alcorn earlier. And so Randy Alcorn helped me on this one. He got me halfway there. 1 John 2:16 says, Satan only has 3 main lies, because Satan's got a heart language. He lies. That's just what he does. Lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and pride of life. And so in Randy's book, he talks about the lust of the eyes. Satan has created nothing. God and Satan are not two equals, co-equals, right? God created everything. So Satan can only take something God created. So that's possessions. There's nothing wrong with your house, Carey. There's nothing wrong with your car. There's nothing until it kind of owns you. And you think, man, if I just get that house, I'll be happier. So Satan lies to you. That's the lie he says. More possessions will make you happy. So what? But Randy stopped there and think, okay, what's the antidote though? I gotta solve Satan's lie. I thought, what's generosity? You show me somebody who's generous, and you don't have to worry about it. They're always giving stuff away. That was my grandmother's problem. She only had 2 dresses. She gave one away, right? You don't have to worry about it. Satan has that lie is not going to work. He's got to go to a different lie. Well, the next lie is the pride of life, and that's position and power. And there's nothing wrong with positions. We have CEOs, we have COOs, we got power. There's nothing wrong with that until pride of life hits. So Satan lies to us to say, oh, you're supposed to use that to serve yourself. Power and position, now you get served. And so what is the antidote to that? I said, well, it would be humility. What I'm looking for is people have humility. And then the third one is the lust of the flesh. God gave us pleasures. He gave us our sexuality. He gave us food. The pleasures of life all came from God. Again, Satan lies, and he takes us to places that God doesn't give us for those pleasures. And so the third one would be integrity. And so I say you go to school to learn ABCs. I say I'm looking for people with J, H, and I. So if you go back and look at my close friends that I have around me, there'll be 3 things that they have. They're generous people, they have humility, and they have integrity. Now, I've had some friends along the way I've lost because of some of those things or whatever, but that's who I hang with. That's who I can run with and go a long ways. So I would say all 8 of these ministries currently and in the past have exemplified generosity, because sometimes ministries think, well, they receive, but I need them to be generous too. Just like Rob Hoskins was generous. He told me about another ministry. Usually they don't do that. Most ministries don't tell donors about other ministries. But Rob understood kingdom. He was a kingdom thinker. So he knew that I had something, relationships with Bible translators that could help Bobby. And so, and then humility and integrity. So that's what I'm looking for in my position, is to do that. And so that's some of the things, Carey.
It's amazing to me that you would name 3 personal characteristics, which ultimately become organizational characteristics, right? As go the leader, so goes the organization. But generosity, humility, and integrity, it's kind of universal and deep, not broad, right? Like 8, and we'll go really deep. And I think that's my wife and I, on a very micro level from what you're able to do. We've thought about it. We have 3 fundamental causes that we're behind. One in disproportion, our local church.
Yep.
To everything else. And then just literally on one hand, a few others that we're like, we can't do everything, but we also figure, lots of other people are going to give to lots of other causes. And these are going to be the things that we're about. So,
and a couple of causes we give to, I didn't mention, would be 2 things last for eternity: God's word and the souls of men and women. So a lot of what we give to is Bible. You heard YouVersion. You heard Museum of the Bible. I'm involved with the Bible translation, because those 2 things last forever. So if you're going to invest in something, you want to get a good EROI, eternal return on investment. So those are 2 causes that we give to.
It was really interesting when I toured Hobby Lobby a number of years ago. I remember walking through one of the hallways, and there were different things displayed, but there was perhaps the original iPhone that YouVersion was first downloaded on from, 2010 or something like that, sitting in the lobby. And the millions, hundreds of millions of people who open up YouVersion every day probably wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for your family's decision and Bobby's vision to partner together on this one. So just on behalf of all of us who enjoy it and have enjoyed it for many, many years, thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Wow.
One of the questions that intrigues me, appetite is insatiable, right? Like, if you let it get out of control, you'll always be hungry. And so 2 questions on that. What have you learned about the hedonic treadmill? That idea that $10,000 more is going to make me happy, that the slightly bigger house is going to make me happy, that when I become CEO, when I become the lead pastor, when I become, when we have 5 campuses, whatever it is will make me happy. What are you learning about what a lot of sociologists or psychologists call the hedonic treadmill? This episode is brought to you by ECFA. Leadership is hard, especially in ministry. I mean, the pressures, the demands, the weight of responsibility. It's no wonder so many leaders feel burned out or isolated, but it doesn't have to be that way. ECFA's new leadership standard is a game changer. It's about creating a culture where boards proactively care for their senior leaders, supporting their well-being and their integrity, not just as leaders, but as whole people. So imagine a leader who's not just surviving, but thriving spiritually, emotionally, and physically. When leaders are cared for, their impact ripples outwards, strengthening families, teams, and entire ministries. It's a step toward healthier leadership and renewed trust in ministry. You can learn more about leader care at ecfa.org/leadership standard. That's ecfa.org/leadership standard.
Our family mission statement kind of helped me drive me to my why. Now, you can ask me, what do I do? And I've done lots of whats. I was the founder of Mardale. I was at Hobby Lobby as a 9-year-old. Mayor. I've been Bible translation. So I have different titles. I've been a board chair at different places. So those are the what questions. And a lot of people ask that, but how do you answer the why question? Because I think the why question kind of gets to the point of what you're asking, Carey. And I didn't ask myself that question really until a few years ago. And what helped me was about 15 years ago, we sat down as a family, Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 1 and 2. Again, when we're going through all of this, what do we do with the wealth? Do we own the company? Are we stewards of the company? We say, well, what's our mission statement as a family? Every business we've ever had, we've always had a mission, a vision, and core values every single time. We don't have one for our family. Well, our family is even more important than our business. And so we had a couple of people come in from the outside. We got, I think it was 3 different weekends. We went to just a local hotel. My parents, my brother, my sister, our spouse, there's 8 of us, got out the whiteboards and got out the Post-it notes and started writing down what's important to you. And, went through that process. And so we have our core values. We have a vision statement, but we got down to our mission statement, something that's really easy to remember that we could state. And it was love God intimately and live extravagant generosity. So in 6 words, that's what we want to be about. Loving God intimately and living extravagant generosity. So I've spent the last 15 years trying to figure out, how do you do both of those? The second one was a little easier to do because I knew about generosity. It was kind of a family trait. The first one, love God intimately. How do you do that? So I actually started writing down, when did I feel closer to the Lord? And I have 31 different ways. I put a document together. It's got 31 different ways that I felt like I've gotten closer to the Lord. I got a verse with them, and 30 out of 31, I got a song with. I still got one I don't have a song for. But through all that process, then I said, well, what's Mark Green's why? All the way down to me. And I say my why is to encourage intimacy with God through Bible absorption and extravagant generosity. So all my whys. Why am I involved with The Chosen right now? Well, I'm involved with The Chosen right now because I believe The Chosen drives people back to the Bible, which is intimacy with God. And so that's what The Chosen is all about. It actually shows a very intimate God. And it drives people to the Word. I know that because the YouVersion shows us that when The Chosen plays Nathaniel, came on The Chosen the first time, and Nathaniel way overtracked. Matter of fact, they thought they had a glitch in the system. And then one of the guys says, I think Nathaniel, because people, is it Nathaniel Bartholomew? What was his name? So people are going. And so what a thrill it was for Dallas and Amanda to know that, yes, that's exactly what they wanted. This is just a TV show. Go read your Bible. I mean, I've heard Amanda say that. And so, but that's my why. So why I'm involved with Chosen? Why I'm involved with Bible translation? Well, obviously, because I feel like to get intimate with the Lord. And I use the word Bible absorption because I think there's 4 A's to the Bible. One is Bible access. That's translation. If you don't have it, you don't even have access. There are people on planet Earth that do not have access to God's word in their heart language. And I'm working on that on their different hat. Then you got what I call advocacy. Who advocates for the Bible? Lifts the Bible up, brings its place in culture. The Museum of the Bible will be one of those ways that our family tries to advocate for the Bible. Right there in Washington, D.C., you go and see, wow, this Bible has lasted, and it's real, it's true, it's God's word. And then you got academics. You got what I call teachers and preachers. We need teachers and preachers. There's parts of this Bible that I think I can understand it, but it sure helps when one of those teachers or one of those preachers explains it to me. And then my fourth used to be E, was Bible engagement, because I thought, well, then I heard somebody use the word absorption. I thought, oh, I like that even better. So the fourth one is not engagement, it's Bible absorption. I want the Bible so deep inside of me, Carey, that when I get squeezed, it comes back out. Because I don't know anybody who doesn't get squeezed in life. Yeah. And really, that's where your testimony is at. People are not all that, I mean, they're enthralled with success, but they really want to know is you got knocked down and you got back up. And so that's why I want Bible absorption to be inside of me. So how do I live a life of generosity, humility, integrity? I want to hold myself accountable to that. Do I do it all the time? No, I fail too, but it's my goal. I know where my goal is. And so because that's our goal, my goal is that every person on planet Earth, all 8 billion, would have an intimate relationship with God. All right. So if I want that for my family, I have to want it for everybody. Well, I'm never going to reach that goal. I don't have enough time to do that. And so for me, that's what keeps me going every day. Why, I've already told you, we're not going to make any more money. If we make more money next year, I won't make a dime more. All right. But I'll give away more. Whatever we make, I give away half of that. And why would I do that? Because I'm thinking about eternity. And so I'd love to see as many people in heaven have an intimate relationship with God, so they have an eternal destiny with their Maker. And so that goal is unreachable. We have to have other people, and other people are working on that same goal and have that same passion. But that's what gets me up in the morning every day, is to be able to go out, live an intimate relationship with my Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit, and then try to convince many other people that Jesus loves you, unconditionally loves you. The question is not whether he loves you. The question is, do you love him back?
I've had some meals and conversations with people who are heavily involved in Scripture, and they've told me about some of the initiatives that you have taken or spearheaded over Bible translation over the last number of years. Can you give us an idea? Because I think it was a field, I don't want to call it an industry, but a field that was ripe for disruption / modernization. In other words, from what I understand, and maybe I'm wrong, you can correct me on this, but Bible translation up until very recently was being done as it's been done for the last couple hundred years. You know, you send a missionary off, they work for 40 years trying to learn this dialect. They maybe get the Gospel of John translated before they die, and then someone else goes in the field, tries to do Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and maybe 100 years later you get a whole Bible. And that's not, from what I understand, that much of an exaggeration. That has been disrupted / modernized significantly in the last few years. Can you talk about your involvement in that process and the philosophy to get the Bible into every language known to man by 2033?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking, Carey. And there's lots of people doing lots of things. So I have a part of the story. So I can share my parts of the story. I'm not the story. But actually, it's ironic. In 1998, I had quite a life-changing moment. And it was when I saw a man get God's word in his heart language for the first time, and he wept for it. Matter of fact, when he was weeping, he wiped the tears away because he had gotten God's word in his heart language for the first time. And that really impacted me. And so I started journaling.
What is heart language, just so we all understand it?
Yeah, a heart language is what you were taught in your home. And the way I like to say it is, if you proposed to your wife or got proposed to, that would be the language that Jesus would speak to you. It's the language you speak in your home. Now, many people know more than one language. They may know their heart language and Spanish. But what's the language when you go back home, when you propose to your spouse? What's the heart language that you know intuitively first? That's your heart language. We believe Jesus would speak to you in that. He wouldn't make you go learn Spanish or speak to you in Spanish if he knew your heart language was Eastern Hoggeltech. So for Gaspar, his heart language is Eastern Hoggeltech. Now, he knew the trade language, Spanish, so he could make it in Spanish. Now, his parents couldn't, but he could because he was of the age and stage. He could speak Spanish and Eastern Hoggeltech, but his heart language, the one that, that has flavor to it, that has color to it, was obviously Eastern Hoggeltech. So that's what we mean by heart language. And so, anyway. So you
get the Bible in your heart language. That's the goal.
Yeah. So for me, my heart language is the English that was spoken in my house. My mother speak it. I proposed to my wife in that language. And so that's the language. Now, I'm like most people in the world. They know they know at least a couple of languages. I'm an American. I know one language. So
exactly. Canadian. I'm not much better. Tiny bit of French. A little bit of Dutch.
French. You got some French up there in Canada. So
yeah.
Sometimes you got those bilingual. Sometimes you got Spanish, English speakers. Obviously, I have neighbors and friends who speak more than one language, but they would have a heart language, and it might be Spanish and it might be English. Now, for my daughter-in-law, she's a Vietnamese. Was born in a refugee camp in Malaysia. Her parents escaped Vietnam, was in Malaysia. Her mom got pregnant. She was born, and then she came here. Well, her heart language would be Vietnamese. When she goes and talks to her mom, she speaks in Vietnamese. Now, she speaks English. If you talk to her on the phone, you couldn't tell the accent. Her parents, very broken English. You'd have a hard time understanding them on the phone, right? Because that's where she grew up. So their heart language would be Vietnamese. Hers is Vietnamese with some English. Now, her kids, my grandkids, speak English. That's their heart language, but they know some Vietnamese. So their heart language would be English. And so that's what we mean by heart language.
Okay, so you want to get the Bible into the heart language of everyone on earth on some level by 2033. How have you changed or helped change that model that was in place for centuries?
Yeah. What happened to me in 1998, I started journaling because of this experience, this Bible dedication. On June 23rd, 1998, I won't go into the whole story, but I wrote in my journals this night, for some reason, it's just one of I call them the Holy Spirit promptings. God doesn't speak to me, but sometimes I get something in my spirit. I'm like, where'd that come from? I didn't have that idea. So I wrote it down. Someday there'd be a project so big that if the ministry partners didn't come together, it wouldn't happen. Almost like a hand. Like these are all different ministries. They'd have to come together. And then the second line I wrote is someday there'd be a project so big that if the gospel, the patrons, the funders didn't come together, it wouldn't get done. And the third one was, there's a project so big, if the ministry partners and the resource partners don't come together, it won't get done. And I wrote that in my journal, June 23rd, 1998. And 1998 was a pivotal year in my life, the first year I'd ever journaled. So I started journaling because God was doing so much. I figured something will happen really quick, and I'll know why I wrote that down in my journals. I didn't. It took 12 years later. 12 years later. February the 15th, 2010, I'm in Guatemala, which is where I'd seen this man weep over the Bible. And the Lord put in my heart, eradicate Bible poverty. Okay, so that was the idea that I got. Okay, eradicate Bible poverty. We could get everybody God's word in their heart language sooner rather than later if I could get the resource partners and the ministry partners to come together. So that was February the 15th, 2010. By May 3rd, 2010, I'd got home. I'd called some resource partners. I'd called some CEOs. We all met in Orlando, Florida. And I said, guys, if you guys will all come together and work together, I think we could set a goal. I don't think we have to wait till 2150 for the last Bible translation to start. What if we shared data? What if we shared tools? What if we did this? We as donors, if you guys will share things, we'll fund it. How about that? So anyway, that was kind of the spirit of it. It's kind of cumbersome. Is this going to work? And it did, and the next month. So we met every month for 10 years. We met 100 times in 10 years. C21 Admirals Club at Dallas Fort Worth is the largest.
I heard it was at the Admirals Club at Dallas Fort Worth, DFW.
So we fly in, meet for 4 hours and fly back. And so why would you do that? Well, because you have to build relational trust. You want to do something together because unity is super, super hard because Satan always attacks at the point of unity because unity is the power. That's why your marriage is hard. That's why my marriage is hard. That's why all marriages are hard because it's the most unified thing we have. Satan shows up because he knows the power of unity. So anyway, we came together, set goals. We set a 2033 goal. Now it's what we call an all access goal. It won't be every verse translated for every language for Old and New Testament, but 95% of the world will have the Old and New Testament. If we reach our goal, 99.96 will have the New Testament. And the other, if you have 5,000 or less speakers, you'll have at least your first 25 chapters. So I've started that. So that's what we mean by all access goals.
In every language known to humanity.
Yeah, which is 6,000. There's 6,000 vital languages on planet Earth today, counting the 250 sign languages.
Wow. Well, congratulations. Now, one of the things I've heard is that AI is speeding this up. And when people think about AI, they might be like, well, it's the inerrant word of God. You can't use AI for it. How? Because this is a big conversation that we're having in multiple layers on this podcast and because, here we are, if you were doing this 200 years ago, people couldn't fly into C-21 at the Ambassador's Lounge at DFW, right? It just wouldn't happen. You'd be on a ship. Maybe you'd make it to Africa. Maybe you wouldn't. Who knows? So, we're using technology all the time. What role, if any, does AI play in helping advance the spread of the gospel?
Yeah, well, it's fun for us. In 2010, when we first all came together, we said, guys, people are going to have to invent things that aren't invented now if we're going to get this done, because there's no way. I mean, it's going to be 2150. How do you cut 100 years off? And even with all the hard work we've done, we're about 2043 now. So we measure it. There's 683,456 chapters left to reach our goal. So our goal is a number, because you take all those Bibles, times the number of chapters, it's a number, right? And so we've got, like, every month I get a new number. So here in a few days, we'll get the November number. But as of October, it was 683,456. But yeah, we had no idea AI would be one of those tools, but it is one of several tools. But yes, and what's so cool, Carey, is because we have 11 different major partners, but behind those partners, there's other partners. We have 190 different boards that are actually represented by these 11 partners. So that's a lot of people, and they're not like Hobby Lobby top down, right? I mean, you can ask them to do stuff, but they may say no. But we have an innovation lab. So the innovation lab, we went outside of the Bible translation world and brought some people in. We went inside the Bible translation and got the best from each of these 11 and said, let's bring those guys together. So instead of all these organizations going out and do AI on their own, we're collaboratively doing it. We have 6 different tests going on right now. One of the tests takes New Testaments. So there's many languages that have the New Testament done that don't have the Old, right? Because that was kind of the goal for some of the translators, to get the New Testament done. Now, because you got those words, you can put that in and you can get a rough draft of an Old Testament. Now, you still have to have human element, but just think of all the work, the hard work that the New Testament can get it. You have the same word, you have the same things. And so, man, you talk about, such a blessing, just like the typewriter was a blessing. Usually we had index cards, then we had typewriters, then we had computers. So the new technologies help Bible translation all along the way. It's just we have a new one now. So that's going to be a phenomenal tool that'll cut years off of getting those Old Testament done. Now let's take a language that's that has lots of newspapers, has lots of books, because there's large languages. Let's think Middle East, right? Where there's not a lot of believers and there's no Bible in that language, but there's lots of communication available because AI needs lots of information. We take that, put it in the computer, and again, it puts out a rough draft. Then you come back and the humans got to get involved. There's no way that AI is going to be able to get it right. But you go back and forth, back and forth. So that starts at the computer, comes back to human, and then we refine it. And then but it'll cut several years off because it takes 16 years to get a full Bible. What if you could do it in 8? What if you could do it in 4? Well, used to, there was no way to get it from 16 down. That was just kind of what it took. But now we see that vision happening. The third one would be, there are languages that have no written material. They're oral languages. AI, that's kind of tough. You need something. So then you got to say, AI, okay, what if I gave you Matthew? What if I gave you Romans? Oh, you need a poetry? What if I gave you a few Psalms? How much do I need to give you? So now that one, we start with the human, give it to the computer, comes back to human and says, pretty good. Maybe I should do some more. You see what I'm saying? And so that's a third test model that's going out there. So what we're doing is we're making all the mistakes down here once at this level so that by the time we hand it off to the next level, the AI. And so I think we probably got 200 or 300 projects now, where 4 or 5 years ago we had onesie, twosie, and now we have lots of those. Another one's oral Bible translation. Used to, you had to read and write. So I might know Spanish and I might know Eastern Hoggeltech, and I could read and write both of them. But if you couldn't read and write, you couldn't be a translator. Well, now we have a new technology that's audio. So you listen to the Spanish, you say it in Eastern Hoggeltech, and then we're able to translate that and put it out to the people who don't have a written language anyway. And so used to, we always wrote a language first. So now we have like 400 oral translations, because a lot of the ones that are left are the hardest ones, and they're small people groups, and they don't have any written language at all. And so then we're trying to get AI. How does AI help us with audio? And so that's in the works too. So yeah, AI is going to be a phenomenal tool, just like anything. The tool is neutral. The tool is not evil. There's nothing evil about AI. Is AI being used in evil ways? Absolutely it is. Just like computers are, just like typewriters were. And so, but anyway, it's exciting times. It gives us the hope that we can make that 2033 goal. We're still claiming by 2033, Jesus will have been gone 2,000 years. He gave us plenty of time to get this done. So
I just have to ask, for those of us who are curious, who and where is Eastern Hochultech? Where was that spoken? Is that Guatemalan?
It's in Guatemala. It's up in Concepcion, about a 10-hour drive from Guatemala. A death-defying 10-hour drive, by the way. But anyway, I did get there. So anyway, that was the Bible translation where Gaspar wept over that Bible and let me know that I was taking God's word for granted. I wasn't reading God's word on a consistent basis. And I made a vow while I was in Guatemala that I'd get it first thing and read it for the rest of my life. And it's totally changed my life because it's a love letter to me. I get up every morning to read this love letter called the Bible. And it's changed. It's totally rocked my world. But it took a man weeping over his Bible to let me know I took my Bible for granted. And I, of all people, should have known. I own 15 Christian bookstores. I paid for the printing of that Bible, right? I'm a believer. I'm a third generation of my mom and dad. And yet I was reading more books than the book. And now I prioritize the book.
You're reading the mail of a lot of people with their relationship with the Word of God. And I appreciate you sharing that. You're a futurist. So what I've seen and heard that you're doing and others are doing in terms of Bible translation and just, one of the principles underneath that, Mart, is collaboration. And I think if you look at the church as a whole, there's been a lot of silos, to use Patrick Lencioni's language, silos, politics, and turf wars. It's like, I'm going to figure this out. I don't need your help. You and I have been at some gatherings over the last few years convened by Scott Beck, where trying to bring Christian thought leaders together and figure out how we can cooperate. As a futurist, what role do you see cooperation playing in the future of the capital C Church in individual congregations?
Yeah, great question, Carey. And I think it's huge because, John 17:21 tells us that when we're unified, the world will then know who he is. Mm-hmm. So we know that verse. It's hard. There's lots of diversity. But I guess what encourages me that I see happening out there is what is sometimes called city gospel movements. It's where people in the city try to come together. Sometimes it's led by business people. Sometimes it's by the church. So different cities have these. They don't all have them. But it's them coming together and say, how do we serve our city? What are the needs of our city? I live in Oklahoma City. My needs are different than your city in Canada. They're different than California, different than Nevada. They're all different. But where's the action going to happen? Where does discipleship happen? It always happens at the local level. And so in the end, Christ followers need to happen at the local level. So what happens when we come together, whether we're Catholic, whether we're Pentecostal, whether we're Baptist, how do we come together to serve our city? What are the needs of our city? And so let's come together. Business, government, church, we all care about the same things. We all care about our kids. We all care about justice reform. All these things are commonalities, and yet Satan has lied to us and got us working apart. So I guess I'm encouraged to see these city movements. They're still working it out, but they're moving along. Eric Swanson and Rob Kelly are kind of bringing some of the city leaders together to say, hey, what are you doing in your city that's working? I don't know, man. I can't get my budget quite right. Whatever. Okay, let's learn from each other. So I think in the years ahead, these city movements will be a huge service to the cities, and it'll be multi-denominational. It'll be business people. It'll be the whole body coming together. Because God even uses people who aren't his people who serve him. God still uses people and gifts people who never give their heart to the Lord, right? But he gifted them with incredible talents, and we can use those talents. Now, obviously, we're still going to, as a city gospel movement, we're still going to tell people about Jesus. That's going to happen at some point, but you got to serve people. So how do we serve people well, and how do we do that across denominations? This is the great hope I have that I see happening on the ground. And so I'm sure there's lots of other ways, Carey, and I'm not a church historian and all that, but that's one thing I see that excites me.
Well, if there's one big initiative over the last few years that was supposed to be unifying, and your family had a big role in it, it's the He Gets Us campaign. And, I got some early sneak peeks into it personally. I'll put my cards on the table. I thought it was brilliant, wonderful, inspiring, and I thought it would be unifying. I was a little bit wrong. There was criticism on the right, criticism on the left. And I'm like, what is happening? I'd love to get your thoughts on the reaction to the He Gets Us campaign.
Yeah, I think no matter what you do, you're going to get criticism, Carey. But overall, we've got incredible support. And each
Yeah.
year, as it goes along, it gets more and more. Yeah, he gets this campaign started when my dad in February of 2021 asked me a question. He said, Mart, how did the greatest love story of all time become known as a hate group? So that is starting to happen in our country. And he said, is there any way we could use media? We've tried so much. My dad's 83. He has 47 family members. Between my mom and dad, there's now the two shall become one. No, the two shall become 47. There's 47 off that tree. And we all live in Oklahoma City, right? And you can't argue that he's leaving the country in a better position spiritually, the spiritual health of our country, than when he got it. And that's kind of grievous because you kind of want to leave things better for your kids and your grandkids. So I thought, well, maybe we got a ground game. Maybe we need an air game. Maybe we need to talk about Jesus in a different way. So we did research. I said, if you'll give me 5 months, I'll do it by Christmas. And so we did research. And so we really focused on a certain area. This one campaign, what we call spiritually open skeptics. About 24% of Americans would fall under spiritually open skeptics. They're not agnostic. They're not atheist. They're open to something spiritual. They know there's something out there. They feel something. They're very mind oriented. And so we said, okay, that's our target audience. Let's go learn them. Let's talk to them. And let's ask them before we even start. We played out 4 questions. Does Jesus love you? Is Jesus a worthy example to follow? Do you want to read your Bible? And one other one I just forgot off the top of my head. But then we'd ask them, do you strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree? And about 20% would strongly disagree. Yeah, Jesus is a good man, a good worthy to follow. Christians, I don't like Christians. I don't like church. But Jesus, yeah, but 20% would say that. Almost all 4 of those questions. I mean, some was 18, some 22, but average about 20%. So we had our bench line. So then we started showing these commercials, and we still today interview 800 people, survey 800 people every week to see what their feelings are. If they've seen the He Gets Us ad, we first identify that. Have you seen He Gets Us? We say, have you seen anything that's a Christian thing in media? Yeah, He Gets Us. I saw this commercial. If they answer positive to that and they know what He Gets Us is, when we ask them those same questions, they answer at 30%. So their attitudes have changed. They actually strongly agree that Jesus is a worthy example. So it went from 20 to 30. Now that's attitude change, all right?
Wow.
So this is the long game, right? Now, there are also actions. They've had 400,000 people go to YouVersion and read a reading plan. Now, the criticism comes if you want us to get people converted overnight. That doesn't happen for the most part, but we know that's not going to happen. They're not buying, they're kicking tires. So what we try to say is we're trying to nurture the explorers. These people have raised their hands online and said, I want to know more about Jesus, all right? That doesn't mean, are you ready for the sinner's prayer? They're probably not, all right? So how do you be sensitive to that? Nurture means time. So what we're trying to say is who can nurture the explorer and spend time with them? They may have been hurt at the church. It's going to take a while to get them there. And so we think that Jesus said, follow me. So our goal that He Gets Us, our mission statement there, is that we invite all people one step closer to Jesus from wherever they're at. Okay? That means me.
How did you handle the criticism that came in? How do you process something like that? I imagine at some level it was a surprise.
Yeah, you're surprised. I've just kind of learned, I think, over time that you just keep going on. If there's some person that I knew well or was talking to, I would call those people and just talk to them and try to explain to them, hey, I appreciate your heart, but I just want you to understand what we're trying to do, and that kind of give them a little context because the commercials come out of nowhere and all that, and that's why I think time's our best friend. So as far as media, trying to, go back out on media, zero, nothing there I felt like is necessary. I just think time's our best friend. The good news is the audience that we're trying to reach and that we're speaking to totally gets what we're trying to do. So then you have others that are early adopters, and then there are others that are starting to come on and say, wow, we're starting to understand what you're doing now. This makes sense to us. Wow, we have people coming to our church asking questions. And so we felt like that time would be our best friend. Will we get rid of all critics? No, will never be a day that you satisfy everybody. We have quite a bit of diversity, but there's quite a bit of momentum, and we're building a team. We're finding some errors, okay, some places that we could have done better. Make sure that the church understands what we're doing. How do we share what we're doing? And so we've learned some stuff. So I'm not saying we didn't make any mistakes, We're proud of the commercials that came out. We're proud of what's been able to go. We're proud of what's happened with the audience that we're trying to reach. Those things have all been success, and why we're going to continue to do this in the years ahead. But anyway, as far as media, I don't respond on those issues.
Yeah. So we talked about a lot of the highs. We all have tough days. You've got a new book out we'll talk about in just a minute, but you talk about wounds, what you've learned about from your wounds. I'd love for you to describe like a low in ministry, a low in leadership, or, just we all have favorite failures. What is something that happened in your life that you're kind of like, oh, that was a hard season?
Yeah. I may answer a little more general than you want, so you can ask it again. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, professionally, I'm going to talk professionally now, because even when I do in ministry, it's part of my profession, right? In these ministry involvements, I've always prayed one prayer probably for 15 years. Each morning, I prayed it again this morning. It's Luke 10:2. Luke 10:2 tells us how to pray. Actually, it says, "The harvest is plentiful, but the harvest hands are few. Pray for harvest hands." So for me, that's always been my prayer. Lord, send me the right people, whether it's at Mardell, whether it's at Hobby Lobby, Bible translation, or work with the chosen, work with He Gets Us. Send us the right people. So the hard days are when somebody embezzles for you. You've prayed for people, you've got people, you entrust people, and all of a sudden you get this phone call and find out embezzlement's happened. Or one of your employees dies, or one of their family dies, or you have to fire somebody. So all my low days have to do around that happening, because yes, I try to hire as best I can. I want the right people, and God has sent me some phenomenal people. The only reason I'm here is because God has sent me phenomenal people. One of the things that really impactful to me was by Craig Rochelle, when he said he's obsessed with empowering the right people. And I love that. I love empowering the right people. I don't have to be the guy up front. I don't have to lead everything. I actually enjoy seeing the team win. And so when one of the teammates doesn't make it, that's a bad day for me. And I've had those. And so I've had those days.
Yeah, it wasn't surprising when you said embezzlement. Of course, when you have a family like yours and success like yours, it's not surprising that it might attract a couple of bad actors. But I guess I'm naive enough not to have predicted that answer. How do you protect what God is building? Because your dad, maybe your family has signed the Warren Buffett pledge, to give away at least half of your income, et cetera, et cetera. But what are some guidelines? Because there are some people listening to this leading very significant causes who might be struggling with, I'm a very trusting person. I'm sure lots of listeners are trusting people. Is there any radar you've developed for detecting the bad apples ahead of time, or does it always seem to be a surprise?
No, it's always a surprise. I mean, you try as best you can to hire the right people. You go look through resumes, you talk to references, but it still happens. We have humans, and situations happen in their life, things change. And again, sometimes it's a death. Those things happen. Those are bad things that they didn't do. Now there's some where they made their decisions to do those. At another level, at the family level, for us, we have the Green Stewardship Trust. So who stewards this? I mean, my dad is still the CEO. He's been the CEO from day one. He's still the CEO, but someday he won't be. So you also have a board. I told you there's two parts. There's the wing, you got leadership, and you have governance. So who gets on the board is really, really important to our family. And for the future, good stewardship, good governance is not hereditary necessarily. And so every year I have to sign a statement of faith again. Do I still believe this? Do I still believe this? Do I still believe this? So to be on the Green Stewardship Trust, any family member who's on it, and it's only family that's on it because we feel like God has given us this business. And so it's the Green Steward. We steward it. Now there's a Hobby Lobby board that has non-family members on it. But above that is a Green Stewardship Trust. So if the board someday decided, hey, we think we ought to open on Sundays because we make more money, the Green Stewardship Trust might cancel that out and say, no, that's a core value for the family. We want people to be home with their families, so we're not opening on Sundays. But besides that, it's run down here. But this Green Stewardship is the ultimate authority, and those are family members, and so they have to sign a statement of faith every year. And so that's a way to make sure that you keep those values in place over hopefully generations. How long the Lord's going to tarry, we don't know. So you have to assume He's going to tarry for a long, long time. So how do you put things in place? I'm sure 200 years ago, they thought we weren't going to make it to today, right?
Yeah.
But we did. We made it 200 more years, and we make it 200 more years.
So you've co-authored a new book on learning to be loved, and there are a lot of insights in that. One of the things you talk about, though, is how you've grown closer to God through wounds. Can you unpack that a little bit for us, Mart?
Yeah. David Bowden came to me, and he wrote about 80% of the book and asked me to write stories that, as we talked about earlier, I talked about gateways of intimacy. So I have 31 gateways of intimacy. And he said, would you write stories? I'm going to write a book. I'm going to take 20 of your gateways. I'm going to write a book about it. And you're going to write 20 stories. I said, okay, I think I can do that. Usually I get my books on 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. That's about as far as I can write. But one of those is wounds, which is a little bit unusual. How to get intimate with God through wounds. And my story is that I got married, as I said, 42 years ago to my wife, Diana, who I met in 9th grade. And we had our ups and downs in our marriage. And then I had kids and they started getting married. And I was having some of the same problems with kids getting married in. I'm like, man, I got to get somebody to help these guys. I've got my wife that I still got this issue that's nagging along. And now I've got some of my kids and a couple of my kids and their spouses. I'm like, I can get somebody to fix these guys. So I went and got somebody to come and fix them. And they came in, they talked about trust, which is something that I think I have a strength in. Some reason I'm able to build trust with people. I built trust in the Bible translation, area. And so I'm a trust builder. I'm good at that, And so we talked about trust. So I'm feeling pretty good. And then he says, now how about emotional trust? I said, emotional trust? I'm not even sure. I know what you're talking about. What's that? Well, Mart, do people trust you with their emotions? And so I'm backing out going, let's cancel the meeting. I got to figure out what's going on here, man. And he says, well, when your wife brings her emotions to her, what do you do? I said, well, and the truth is I try to fix them, right? Because ever since I was 19, I've been in charge, right? Because I ran my own business. At 19, you're a teenager, you got people older than you, they come in, hey, the toilets don't work, whatever. You're always fixing problems. So my wife brought me her problems. I assumed she wanted me to fix them.
I'm familiar with that problem. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Over time, they kind of shut down. You see what I'm saying? It says, no. What your wife wants you to do is get down in the well with her. I'm going, what? Why would I go get down in that well with her? She just wants you to understand her emotions and feel her emotions and understand that they're real. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I got to go down in there and feel and not fix it. He says, yep. And so anyway, the deep wound that I gave my family, and if you're artistic in my family, it was the worst because they're the most emotive, right? And I didn't understand the artistic heart. And so I said, get up and get over it. I was not a safe place for their emotions, to trust their emotions. So it's much easier for now. So when my wife's complaining about something, I don't fix it or say, well, they probably didn't mean that. They probably, I always explained it away. Usually it's guys that do this. Don't do that, right? Go down there in it with her and just hear her feelings. And actually that will bring healing to her. And it's easier for me because I don't have to fix it. Usually I'm trying to figure out a way to fix it. And so for me, it got a whole lot easier and it's got a much closer relationship with my wife, going back with my children and building that. And so now that's a wound I had. God is healing me of that wound. And God tells us he heals us of our wounds so that we can heal others. And so that's why I'm willing to say it's embarrassing. I don't like to share that. I'd rather tell success stories, to be honest with you. But I'll roll up my sleeves and show you a big old scar that I got on my arm. But I'll also show you that I got healing and God can heal you too. So anyway, that's how I got intimate with the Lord, because I got closer to the Lord through my wound because he healed that wound. And now I feel closer to him because of that. It also allows me to know one of my ministries. So I tell people that I meet, I know one of your ministries. I go, really? I go, yeah, your deepest wound. Because the deepest wound is where the flower grows. And I don't know what your deep wound is. And you may not have healing yet. So you're not a healer until you're healed. So whatever your deep wound is in life, Satan's lied to you and you've got a deep wound. Let's find healing for that. But once you get that healing, it is now one of your ministries. It may not be your lead ministry. I don't know exactly how God to use it, but I'm telling you, it's one of your ministries.
I'm familiar with that dynamic. And for me, it's been like the last 15 years or so, similar timeline where I've had to learn I'm not fixing everything. I've been in charge for most of my life as well. Do you know, to the extent that you're comfortable sharing, Mart, where that may have developed along the way? Do you have insight into how that was a blind spot for you for so long, as it was for me?
Yeah, I'm quite left brain. Math is what I do. I'm just good at that. I'm just that way. God doesn't give us all the gifts, and so
That's for sure. Yeah.
Years ago, I said I wasn't creative, but I changed it. I am creative. I have creative ideas, but I'm not artistic. And so, opposites tend to marry each other. So I was very strong in this area, and that's why God gave me my wife, right? So now she can be emotional. She actually can see things, right? She knows things about people. She's more intuitive about those things, and I need her. Thank the Lord, it's because of a gift that I didn't have. So I think it's just my natural bent. I just assumed everybody was like me, and I just didn't take time to allow myself to think a different way until somebody stood me up, looked me in the eye, somebody I respected, right? Because I brought him in to fix the family, and I got fixed. So anyway, so God knew it took. I'm that hard-headed. I'm that hard-headed. It's what it took. A world-class professional person that would come in that I highly respected. So because I'd listened to him, when my wife was trying to tell me, she wasn't able to articulate it that way. She just had her emotions. And so then she just learned to kind of slowly shut down. And I didn't want that to happen. So,
Mart, it's been a fascinating conversation. And thanks for being so personally vulnerable on that point. Yeah. Anything else that we haven't touched on that you'd like to share with people listening today?
Wow. I think you've done pretty good, Carey. I love the questions. Thank you for the interview. They're very intuitive questions and draw things out of you. So I think you did a pretty good job. So,
well, thanks for being so open to answering them too. So the new book is called Learning to be Loved. It's with David Bowden. It's available everywhere, including Mardel bookstores. Plug. Okay. If people were going to find you on social these days, where might you be active? Is it LinkedIn? None of the above?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. There's a website, martgreen.net, that has some of the GHI that I talked about earlier, just a little half-page thing. They're totally free. Just download them, or I'll mail them to you if you want them. But martgreen.net.
We will link to that in the show notes. Mart, until next time, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.